is about introducing Anil Gupta. So Jess, over to you and Anil.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very excited about today's call and today's special VIP guest. We have Anil Gupta, as Peter mentioned. He is our special guest and Q&A, so make sure to put all your questions so we get some answers from Anil. He's a world expert on relationships and mindset, and he's coached some of the most famous people and celebrities on the planet, like Mike Tyson, top athletes and CEOs as well. He's been a guest speaker at Richard Branson's Necker Island, and he enjoys helping people overcome obstacles that prevent them from living a fulfilled life. And he's appeared on world stages recently as a keynote speaker in Medellin, I can never say that, Medellin, in front of 10,000 raving fans, and has appeared at Harvard at a number of occasions, and he's a guest speaker on Fox News, as well as a best-selling international author, and all of this on immediate happiness. I mean, who wouldn't want that? So if you want a dramatic impact in your life, stay tuned. And a big welcome to you, Anil. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
I'm amazing, and really thank you for the great intro. I wished I could have written something better, but obviously it's the best I could do. And I try to make that Medellin as hard as possible. And life is about, just letting go, being free and easy and not caring what other people think of you. And just being true to yourself, like we were when we were kids. We just had Peter's daughter on the line, and she was like free spirit. And that's who we are. We are free spirits.
We are. And it's so important. However, society has kind of told us you need to be a certain way, behave a certain way. I know I've certainly been even from childhood, a free spirit. And then in school, that's where it started. It was in school, right? Where it's like, you're not supposed to do that, or you're not supposed to act this way. And then people react, or kids react a certain way. And then one of the things we were telling on one of our feminine empowerment call is the power of how people want to be authentic. They just don't know how. How do we let ourselves be free, and how do we not care what people think?
Well, it's a muscle. You see, the thing is, we haven't exercised that muscle. So at the age of 5 or 6, you go to school, the first thing they tell you to do is sit down and be quiet. You need permission to speak. And then if you do speak and someone laughs, you think, oh, I'm not going to do that again. That's too dangerous. And, our ability to think outside of the box is greatly diminished. That thought process is severely limited. And then, we're regimented. We have to do things in order to get praise. Whereas when we're at home, just by being at home, we're praised. And then all of a sudden you have to perform. And it's a big shock to the system.
100%. So, Anil, can you tell us a little bit about, before we get into the depth of the subject, a little bit about you and your journey, and how did you end up being here talking about happiness?
Well, it's one of those things I could have never predicted. I started off being an optometrist. So I studied eyes and examined eyes. And then in 2002, we left to go to the USA. And then with the 2008 collapse, I lost everything on the stock market, real estate. And in fact, I was suicidal. I wouldn't eat with a knife just in case I did something stupid. I wouldn't walk up a flight of stairs just in case, it just took 10 seconds of madness. Even today, I cannot look over balconies just in case, because that thought pattern comes into my head. And I needed some help. I needed some interventions. And after those interventions, I started to do one thing which really took away all the pain. And I ask all your listeners and audience to do this one thing. This one thing is to give. In the moment you give authentically, all the pain and suffering disappears. So just give. It's very simple. It doesn't have to be money. It could be your time. It could be gratitude. It could be just a kindness. So Jessica and I were speaking earlier on, and we were laughing. To me, that's giving. Making someone laugh is giving. So it doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's a muscle we need to exercise. And then it gets easier and easier and easier.
So before all of that happened, did you say that maybe you weren't giving as much? Like, what was the distinction for you?
Well, before I was honestly egocentric, focused on me and my immediate family. I could have given more, but I didn't know that that was an issue. I mean, I was a member of the Rotary Club, so we would always be giving, but my capacity to love and be giving wasn't as great as it could have been. And this is the issue with people today. Your capacity to give has not been enhanced. Once you enhance your ability to give, it also enhances your ability to receive. And that's a big issue with people, you know. If you want to give, you also have to receive. And that way it's a dynamic situation where you can give for longer periods and at a deeper level. It's a very powerful distinction. Be great givers, but be great receivers too.
Yes, because that's one of the things we were talking about, how, you know, we saw Peter's daughter on the backstage before, and then that made me think of parents and mothers. And that's one of the things when I work with women is a lot of times after motherhood, it's about giving, 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 but they don't give to themselves. So
Yes.
That's a very interesting distinction. And so what would you say to that? Like, how do you give and receive? How do you give without getting taken advantage of?
It's a great question because it's easy to fall into that trap. But before you give, you have to look after this. Make this strong, make this powerful, make this something that it isn't able to collapse and fall down and be weak. So work on yourself first. So physically you need to work on yourself, but emotionally, you know, let go of some baggage, let go of some people that have hurt you. You know where the most expensive real estate in the world, Jessica, is?
Where it is?
Yeah. Is it in China or San Francisco?
I don't know. You tell me.
It's in both. The most expensive real estate in the world is between your ears. So don't rent this space out to other people. So you have to work on you first. You know, if they tell you on planes, if the oxygen masks come down, look after you first. So by you looking after you, you can serve more people. So let me give you an example. If you had $100,000 and you must give away $10,000 a day, how many days could you give the money away for?
If I had 100,000, I have to give 10,000.
Yeah.
I'm not great at math, so I would say 10.
Yeah. Okay. I had to help with that.
10. I think it's 10.
We should rehearse that one. Okay. If someone was replenishing your account every day with more than $10,000, how many days could you give for?
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely. See, that's the thing. For us to keep on giving, we have to receive, which allows us to give forever. So I asked a question to people, are you a great giver? They said, yeah. Then I said, are you a good taker? They said, no, I'm not. I said, that's your problem, because you think you're taking, but you're actually receiving. But because you think you're taking, you won't receive. So if for example, you're a great giver and you wanted to give to me and I didn't receive it, it would hurt you. So when you deny someone that gift of giving, you're hurting that person. So that doesn't make sense. So if you just change the definition of a word, instead of being a great taker, become a great receiver, because you're honoring someone else who's giving, which enables them to give even more because their capacity to give increases. It's a simple but powerful change.
So there's two things that you mentioned that I'd like to touch on. So the first thing is, first you need to take care of yourself, right? The example of the airplane, the oxygen mask to yourself. And then the other thing that I want to touch on, and remind me if I forget, and those of you in the comments as well, you can always comment and let me know. And that's, you know, how do you, okay, and you change your perspective in sort of taking to receiving, but how do we actually do it? So on the first one, how did you do it for yourself? Like, how did you nurture yourself first? How did you take care of yourself? You said physically, but also emotionally. What are your hacks?
Well, you know, I had to share the news with my wife. I said, honey, look, I lost everything, the house, the kids, college fund, everything. And she looked up at me and she smiled. And I said, why are you smiling? Did you not hear what I said? She said, no, honey, I knew something was wrong. Your behavior was not normal. I thought you were dying. I thought you had cancer. And then she gave me a hug and said everything would be okay. So I thought, oh, but isn't that what you wanted? She said, no. So sometimes we assume identities which aren't in an alignment with who we are, because we're trying to please someone, or we're giving something to someone what they really don't need. And we do that with our kids. We try and give them things that we didn't have before, but that only entitles them. You see, we need adversity. When we've all had adversity, but we try and stop our kids from having adversity, which is the exact opposite. The greatest gift you can give your kids is this: give them the ability to handle life by throwing adversity at them that they can reasonably handle. But parents are doing the opposite.
Yes, indeed. And so you were, and I want to go deep. So I made a note. That's the third thing I want to touch on. Like, there's so many strings to pull. I want to dive deep. So your wife then tells you, okay, honey, I thought you were dying. You're actually, you know, that's actually what's happening. So that's why I'm smiling. Was that the only thing you needed to start nurturing yourself? What else did you do?
Well, that's the starter. And then she said, what do you love to do? And I said, well, I love to coach and give. She said, well, okay, let's do that. So I started to do that. And then I felt good. And I thought, oh, okay, things aren't that bad. You know, I haven't died. The world's not collapsed. I was very concerned what other people thought, you know, I must admit. But then it started to change. And then when you start getting hope, you see light at the end of the tunnel and you start changing. You realize that, you know, the important things are family and the kids. There are two most important things in life: relationships and health. That's three, but I can't do two. Relationships and health. They're the only things that are important. And if you work on your relationships and work on your health, I promise you, your life will change. It's got nothing to do with money. How I measure a man's wealth is not by how much money he has, but what he has left when you take away his possessions. How kind is he? How generous is he? How playful is he? How loving is he? How caring is he? That's what your wealth is. And if you use that as your currency, you're all billionaires. And that's the quickest way to get to be a billionaire. Change the currency.
And so how did you stop caring what people thought?
You could never really stop. I mean, I still care when someone says something to me. I care, but I don't let it have power over me. And the secret is not to react, but to respond. See, a reaction is normally fear-based, but a response is more thought out. So if someone says, hey, Anil, you're stupid, I would say, thank you for sharing that. And there is some truth in that. Let me investigate that and say, you know what, you're right, I will work on that. So I'm not going to react, but I will respond. Because if someone takes the time and trouble to say something to you, there has to be a grain of truth in it, which allows you an opportunity to grow, rather than, you know, get reactive and upset and you know, push your buttons and your triggers. It doesn't have to be that way. So there's a few things, a few dynamics, and it's about the difference that you make too. So I had to disappear. My ego had to disappear. And I realized that life is not about me, but about the difference I make. So if I can help people and I have pure intent, that's another important distinction. It's about the intent. So for example, I'm walking down the street and suddenly I push my wife to the floor. She would get very upset, really, she would. But I wouldn't bother me because I know my intent was pure. Well, you may say, well, how can your intent be pure? I said, look, there's a car coming. I wanted to protect my wife, so I threw her to safety. Isn't that pure intent? If she gets upset with me, it doesn't matter. So when you have integrity, when you have pure intent, it doesn't matter what people think. And if they think what they want to, they can. But really, none of us are that important. They'll think about us for a few seconds, then they'll go to somewhere else. So it's distinctions. And the way to get the distinctions is through awareness. Awareness gives you clarity. Clarity gives you focus. Focus gives you action. Action gives you results. Results gives you momentum, which gives you everything. So you cannot be in love, you cannot be joyous, you cannot be successful without awareness. That's the master discipline.
Oh, so what is awareness for you?
Awareness is for me how I show up. Am I being amazing? Am I being the best I can? Am I being a great father, brother, husband, son? Am I just being authentic? So awareness is, am I being healthy? And most of the time I'm not. That's being honest. People think knowledge is power, but it's not. Knowledge is not power unless you implement. I know how to lose weight, but I'm human. But I'm comfortable. That's my problem. See, as human beings, when you're comfortable about being comfortable, you're not going to grow. You have to become comfortable about being uncomfortable. That's when you grow. When you're uncomfortable, that's when you grow. And as human beings, we need to get uncomfortable about being comfortable so that we can grow. So there's a lot of distinctions. This is, over many years that I've learned, and, we're fast tracking it for the audience here, because if you start changing, the decisions you make today will determine your destiny. If you make a decision today, your life will change. If you decide today to be 10% healthier over a year, can you imagine where that would be? Where that would take you? How would that impact your family? How inspiring that would be? So, we all have a decision to make, and this COVID has brought that awareness, is how are you going to show up in life? Are you going to be a winner, or are you going to be comfortable? Are you going to serve other people or not? How are you going to show up? I'm asking the audience, how could you show up differently? How could you show up more powerfully? How could you give more? How could you show up with your greatness in full view?
Yes, what a great question. How will we show up? And it's so in alignment with what we do here at Hack Mankind, Anil, because we always say they're life hacks. They're life hacks that you can build on. It doesn't need to be a huge change, because that can be overwhelming. Then if you don't do it, then you start negative talking. But if it's little distinctions that you just build on, and it's 10%, just 10%, it exponentially makes a difference after a year, 2 years, 10 years. We always overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10.
Really? Yeah, absolutely. So, Jessica, if I asked you to be 1% happier, could you do that?
Yes.
Okay. That's like 30%. She cheated. Okay.
That was the hard one for me. I like being happy.
Okay. Could you be 1% kinder?
Yes.
Could you be 1% more gentler? More present, more joyful, more caring, more rounded?
Anything 1%, 100, okay. Yeah. It could be anything 1%.
Now, if you decide to do that just for one day and continue doing it, the magic is enormous because it's compounding. Einstein said the greatest force on this earth was compounding interest. He was wrong. I love saying that. He was wrong. Einstein, you're wrong. The greatest force on this planet is compounding. So imagine if you compounded your happiness over a week, a month, a year, you'd be in a totally different place. You'd be on fuego, on fire.
Yes, and it starts by just setting the intention, I think. That 1%, actually, it could be all very unconscious. It's simply setting the intention every single morning and every single night. What are your tricks? Is that what you do? You just set the intention? What do you do?
I do one thing. This is the one thing that if you all do this, everything changes. Be so amazing that you cannot be ignored. And if you are ignored, it doesn't matter, because how you show up on this planet will be this incredible soul. So that's what pulls me. Just be the best of the best of the best I possibly can in every moment that I can. I don't do it all the time. What
happens when you don't? That's the thing, because I feel like the negative self-talk and a lot of the judgment, it's not even people telling us. It's not saying, oh, Jessica, you looked very awful in that video. Why didn't you put some makeup on? Or it's not, you stumble on these words, or you shouldn't go out like that. Whatever it is, the thoughts, it's usually not people telling us. It's what we think people are thinking of us.
Yeah.
And so there are moments where we're not being our greatest self, and we know it. Like I ate a bunch of ice cream last night and after brushing my teeth, And then this morning I was just like, oh my goodness, Jessica, you're not 12 anymore, right? But how do you get back up? How do you get, yes. So how do you be okay with not being amazing every single day?
Just accept it. Once you accept yourself, that's pure love. Don't beat yourself up. Say, you know, I had some ice cream. I had another ice cream. After, see, that's one of her rules. One of her rules is you cannot do anything after brushing your teeth.
Or you just brush
it's a big
it
thing. Yeah. So, you know, if you change the definition, you change your life. So instead
you brought up something very powerful, the rules. Can you tell us a bit more about what you meant by?
The more rules you have in life, the more painful your life will be. So one of the rules, you know, you could have is that my wife has to do this. My sister has to do this. My mother has to do this. My father has to do this. Whatever it is. So we have more rules for family than we do for friends. That's why we get more upset with family, even though the exact same thing happened. And the more rules you have, the more painful your life is. The more attachments you have, the more painful your life will be. So remove the rules, as many as you can, remove the attachment, and remove the expectations. So it'll give you an ability to respond rather than react. And the cumulative power of this is immense, really immense.
When you said attachments, can you be a little clearer? Because some people might say attachments as relationships, but that's not the same thing.
Well, attachments, yeah, around relationships, around money. You know, you lose some money, or you made a bad investment. You're attached. You're attached to the outcome. You're attached to what it means. So just letting that go and saying, you know, what actually happened was I invested this, I lost this. That's it. So it's really looking at it objectively rather than, you know, beating yourself up. And again, it's a muscle. The attachment that we have around our children, you know, how they're doing at school, you know, how are they doing in life. So if you can remove that attachment, that allows you to see things as they are rather than the emotive things that we think that things are.
So Anil, we've got some questions coming in from, I think, either on the backstage, but also on Facebook. I think they're being put into our backstage. So we were talking before earlier about receiving, right? It's all about giving, but in order to give, you also need to learn how to receive. And we changed that perspective on, it's not you're good at taking, you're good at receiving. And so one of our attendings is asking, what if there's no one to receive from?
Okay. So that's BS. You know what BS is?
Yes.
What?
Well, I can't really say it. It's a family-friendly show.
What belief systems?
Oh, you got me. This is the third time, guys. You didn't see the first day. I was like,
There's so much material here.
I am loving it. It's a lot of BS, belief systems. All right,
Yes.
Tell us more.
Okay, so she believes that, or he believes that. It's not true. All you have to do is look harder, look differently, and let go that there's no one to receive from. I receive from every single day. I played tennis this morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. I received from my partner, from jumping in the pool afterwards. I received. Someone said, good morning. I received. Maybe the person is looking for the big things. It's not about the big things. It's a little act of kindness. Someone smiling at you, someone saying thank you to you. You know, I received with Peter's daughter. Yeah. We received with playing with this. It's the simple things. There's always a place to receive, but it's a muscle that hasn't been exercised. So look for places, people, things to receive from. You know, the sun, that's a receive. Enjoy the sun, enjoy the rain, enjoy the air. That's a receive. It's just a muscle that hasn't been exercised. But great question.
Yes, and it's so true that there are just little things. We just have to look for evidences. Just look for evidence and a smile. One of my gains is to every time I'd go to a grocery store. That's before COVID when we all had masks, but you could still tell if somebody's smiling or not. But my challenge was to make the teller smile every time. And sometimes you get some grumpy ones. And I would walk out of there and I would achieve. I would not leave until they would crack a little smile. And that's the thing too.
You know what to do now. Jessica and I were playing a little game before the show, and I said,
"Oh yes,
Jessica,
you have something on your face. Something on your face." But I wasn't sure if you were going to tell you during the show. And I'm looking at him like, "Is it lipstick? What is it?" And then you said,
"It's your smile."
Oh.
And with kids, you can say it's your nose. Yeah. So it's just fun. So the question is, if we remove rules, what happens to setting boundaries? Okay, why would you set boundaries? Isn't a boundary a rule?
So I have an answer to that. I'm not sure if that's what this person meant, but for me, who have been the opposite of not setting boundaries, I felt like sometimes I didn't know how to say no. And then I would get drained. I would take too much on, and then I wouldn't feel great. And then some people have some behaviors that they don't know, always coming from the preface of everybody's innocent and got good intentions. But if we don't tell them it's not okay, how do they know? Yes. Right? If I'm play fighting with my dog and I don't say ow, he won't learn how soft he can bite or not bite.
Yeah.
So I think for me, for example, I'm not sure if that's the same what you were posting on the question. A boundary is learning to say ow, to say this for me is ow.
Yeah, you have healthy boundaries. So can I ask you a question? Do you still find it easy to say no?
No, I still don't. I'm working on it.
Okay. So would you like to have a massive breakthrough?
Yes.
Okay. So give me an example of something that you wanted to say no to, but you actually said yes to, or would normally do. Anything. It could be the simplest of things. Hey, Jessica, would you help me on this project? Something like that.
Yeah, it could be that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Jessica, would you help me on this project? You're going to be amazing. You're going to love it.
I'd love to. And then I would just be like, and right now I have a lot on my plate. And
okay. So ask me.
Hey, Neil, would you like to work on this project? I think you'd be incredible. You'll help so many people.
Jessica, I'm honored that you would ask me, but at the moment, I just don't have enough time. Can I come back to you in a couple of weeks?
Sure.
Okay. See, the secret is this. When Jessica says no, she's thinking she's saying no to the person. It's never that. It's always the offer. So when you ask me, I'm saying no to the offer, not no to Jessica.
What if people get upset? So in relationships, right? This I find when it's easier to say no to, as you say, people who have less rules. And then people closer, like family members, parents, or in a real intimate relationship, to be able to say no and being okay with them getting upset.
Okay, so ask me anything that normally you would want to say no to.
Can you do the laundry today?
I don't think I can.
What do you mean you can't? No. I've been doing this. I've been doing that. You can't just do the laundry?
That's correct.
Duh.
Can I do it some other day?
No, it needs to be done right now.
Okay.
So you never do anything. You do you this, you that, you nah.
Okay. So it's not your problem.
So you just don't take it on.
If you don't want to do it, just say no. Or I'm sorry, I can't. I've got a project. But say it in a beautiful way.
Right.
And if they get upset, just say, look, I'm sorry you're upset. My intention wasn't to hurt you. Of course, under normal circumstances, I would have loved to have done the laundry. I would be happy to do it another day, but today is impossible. I've got this podcast, I've got this. I can do it after that if that helps you.
Mm.
Yeah. So remember, we never know what people are going through. And the upset that they're upset about isn't the thing that they're really upset about. It could be something else. Yeah. So remember, nothing like this, but deflect. Don't take it full on. And if they get upset, they get upset. It's not your fault. It's not your intention. It's always about the intention. When you have pure intention, you cannot be responsible how other people react or how upset they get. And the thing is, with you, you love your family. So, you know, and if you're a people pleaser, then you become a football of other people's opinions. So you always want to please, but remember, this is first. And then your capacity to love increases so you can love your family even more. So
Yeah.
look, I can't do the laundry, but is there anything else I can do for you? Yeah?
Yeah. And
It's a big thing. It takes time.
And the key thing is really what I found on a personal level to answer that question is really, it's baby steps. Again, like anything we were talking about, it's baby steps. And those were examples that, you know, it has happened to me in the past. Like I can think about 5-6 years ago, just can you do the laundry when I'm already overwhelmed with my business, with other things and a million other things. And there's a housekeeper. And in my head, like, why don't you just ask the housekeeper? and I would get very upset having to say no. And then it can escalate because the energy of saying no comes out as something that was not healthy. And now I'm able to say no in a loving, caring way and being okay of the upset. And I think for people pleasers, at least my hallucination for my situation is that they would get so upset and I was scared of getting them upset because then I was scared to lose something, to lose the love, right? Or the connection. But what I found, the secret nugget that was hidden is the more I respected my time and myself, the more I do love myself, the more respect, love, and that I get. Even though the immediate might be upset, the long-term result is respect and cherishing.
Yeah, and the reason is your vibrational energy changes. And when your vibrational energy changes, it's healing. It's so healing. And it's not reactive. It's not unhealthy. It becomes healthy. And then a beautiful thing happens, Jessica. You're not enabling them. Because if you keep on saying yes, that you're enabling them, and then they keep on doing it. Sometimes you just have to say no, and they'll find another solution. There's always a solution. There's always someone else to answer.
Yeah, 100%. And that brings us back to kind of tying the loop to what we were talking about, our children and adversity. I want to tie that down because I feel, now we've kind of been confronted with it, right? It just happened. Everybody's staying home and no school. And there is, it's been a hard time, not only for ourselves, but also for children. We have our Karen, who's our health and education and kids panelist, and we talk about it every week. And they are going through adversity, but there's been a couple of generations that haven't. And you see these people now as young adults, and can you touch on that? I'd love to hear your opinion. What do you think about that? And why is it so important to have not only adversity, but also that conflict, right? Because it builds, like you were saying, it builds on that.
Yeah, so when Richard Branson was 5 years old, he was thrown in the middle of a field and told to get home. So, I was a big fan of Richard's, read his book and said, honey, guess what we're doing? We're going to throw our kids in the middle of a field and we're going to make them go home. She said, no, are you nuts? No, we're not doing that. And okay. So I thought, what else do I do? So we took them into central London. They were 9 and 7. We put them into central London and told them to get home. That was 21 years ago. If you see them, can you tell them we live in Orlando? My address is, one of them's got a little mole here.
Yeah, that's probably what would have happened.
No, we did. We actually did that.
But you lived in London.
Yeah, we lived in London. So they had to get on the tube and all that. But we were 10 feet behind them. But we could only be contacted if it was an absolute emergency. So
they didn't know you were following them?
No, they knew. They knew.
They knew. So they felt safe to do it because they knew you weren't far away, but they had to figure it out on their own.
Everything. Unless it was life and death, they couldn't come to us. So if they went on the wrong train, great. If they stood in the wrong part of the platform, great. It doesn't matter. But they grew. And then we continually threw adversity at them. So when my daughter was 18, she went around the world by herself. So she had that ability. So she called me from Australia going to China. She said, Dad, I'm going to China tomorrow. Great. She said, Dad, I have nowhere to stay. I said, great. I could have fixed it, but I said, how are you going to handle that? What do you mean? So, well, honey, you got to work this out. And she did. See, it may be painful for us to do that, but it's the right thing to do. In nature, this is what happens, but this is what human beings do, but we're not serving our kids. When you make them go through adversity, they will love you because they want to love you, and their capacity to love you will be much deeper and more authentic. Not because they have to, not based on fear. See, a lot of people are fear-based with their children because they don't want to lose that love. They know that they can lose that partner love, but they don't want to lose that child love. So when you make decisions based on fear, it's always painful. It sucks up energy. It's horrible.
Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Swain, our founder, wanting to jump in.
I managed to stay silent for 40 minutes. That's almost a record.
That's us talking. We didn't leave any room.
Yeah, I wanted to just say for everybody that there's another thing, Anil, that I see in the power of no. And it's something I advocate all the time, is the power of your no's are as much in the power of your yeses, right? Because I'll give you a true story from today. My wife has done some craft work, and she's turned a palette into a flower pot, a flower arrangement. So you've got different planters for different flowers. And we looked at it, and she's in a bit of a negative space because the kids were everywhere. And she said, "You hate it, don't you?" And I said, "No, not at all." I said, "And you know that's true?" And she went, "Yeah, you're right. You tell me." I'm like, "Yep, I would." I said, "Even in moments like this, I tell you." And I said, "Do you know why?" And she went, "Because you can't handle being dishonest." I went, "No, not really. It's true, but that's not the reason." And she went, "Why?" And I went, "Because now you know, right now, you know, without any doubt in your mind, you know that I mean it. Because when I'm, even in your darkest moment, in the early days when you said, 'Honey, do I look fat in this?' And I said, 'Yes,' from that moment onwards." And Anil, and she, obviously that went like kapow, obviously. And she went, "You're not supposed to say that." And I said, "Okay, but the problem is, Liz, you asked a closed question. Now let me give you the rest of the context for you. I think you are one of the most devastatingly beautiful women in the world. I do not think you're fat. But by the fact that you asked that question, it means that you're doubting yourself. And I love you infinitely. And I love you enough to take the hit right now of being the person you're angry with. Because in 2 hours' time or 3 hours' time, when you catch a reflection at the wrong angle, this moment of, do I look like this and this, is going to come back. So I will cancel the restaurant. I'll move the reservation. I'll go and get another thing. I will create the space for you to feel as amazing as I think you are." So even in that moment, do I look fat in this? I was willing to say, yeah, it's not the most flattering look for you. Because I believe these barriers of absolute truth. When I say to Jess, we're working on some stuff for her relationship course. When I say you've landed that, it's amazing. She knows it. And there's a better model for everyone else to follow. When anybody watches Britain's Got Talent or The X Factor or they crave one judge's approval. They don't care about Lewis this and they care about Simon Cowell. Because if Simon Cowell goes, "You've nailed it," that's phenomenal, they know without any doubt that it's true, because he's just as willing to critique.
Yeah.
And I love your story about your kids, because we shared this on a previous live. I did that to myself. In Switzerland, my mum said I couldn't have an ice cream. And I said, I'm having an ice cream. And my mum said, well, then I'm going to leave you here until you're willing to do it. And I said, fine. She walked around the corner and I left. There was like a police search and everything looking for me. And I ended up back at the hotel because I loved my little Berlitz guide at the time, showing my age a little bit for everybody. So I walked through Switzerland speaking German badly. It was a cute little kid with blonde hair. And the thing I would say to everyone, it's just a clarification. I know exactly what you meant, but just in case anyone missed it. As a parent, remove suffering. Remove suffering wherever you see it for your kids. But don't remove adversity. Those two things are different. Yeah. Adversity is what builds character, is what gives them the strength to absolutely be able to say, I'm going to Australia. So I totally acknowledged it. And the last thing I wanted to say before I come back is there's something called the drama triangle, which I think there's a lot of similarities to what you're discussing. And something I was taught, again, when helping a friend, and it's the concept of there's a protagonist, there's a victim, and there's a facilitator. And if your friend is complaining, or your wife or your husband, about someone else, actually, selfishly, what you don't like about it is how it makes you feel. The fact you feel inept because you can't solve it, the fact that you're annoyed because someone's talking, actually it's about you. But you can choose not to be part of that triangle because it requires the facilitator. You can just step out and go, I'm here for you, I love you, I want to hear you. If you ask for my help, because that's the thing, Anil, I loved in your story about your daughter going from Australia to China. She didn't ask for your help. So you didn't offer your help. And it teaches people, because when she says, Dad, I need your help, I know what's going to happen. You're going to literally end on this webinar, disappear out the door, and you're on your phone going, what can I do? Because you've taught her to not pull the ripcord unless she needs it.
Yeah. So
if she calls it, I'm willing to bet you'll be like, every deal is off. Because you've taught people those boundaries. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I thank you for being the light that you are.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And if I want to just share one thing, Jessica, when you say no to someone, no to that offer, you're actually saying yes to something you love to do. That's a big thing. When you say no to this, you're saying yes to making a bigger impact, yes to changing someone's life. So that's important to know. It's a big thing. It's a huge distinction. Saying no to what you don't want means you're saying yes to what you do want.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Peter, for jumping in. That was a beautiful distinction. Thank you, Anil. That's so true. You say, and very often we want to please everybody, but if we're pleasing everybody, we're not taking the time to look at what is it that we can actually create in our life and create a bigger impact. So there's another question on the back end, and we're talking about there are times when all of a sudden negative thoughts come up and we're not able to silence them, especially now, right? With everything going on. How do I change my energy? How do I change my vibration?
Okay, so don't silence them. Because if you try and silence them, they persist. So Jessica, if your right shoulder was negative thoughts and your left shoulder was positive thoughts, which shoulder would be stronger?
The negative thought, unfortunately.
No.
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 Both. Whichever I give more attention to.
There you go.
Yes.
She's good, Peter. She's good. Keep her.
I very much intend to.
Yeah, that's it. So if you have a negative thought, all you have to do is ask this shoulder, hey, what do you think? It's all bullshit. Oops.
BS.
It's all BS. That's all you have to do. Don't resist it. The thing is, people try and resist it. So Jessica, you live in a house, you come home late at night, it's complete darkness. You flick the switch to see, don't you?
Yes.
You don't go in and remove the darkness. That's ludicrous. That's what people are trying to do. They're going in and trying to remove the negative thoughts.
Darkness.
It's
That's
just,
a beautiful way to put it.
it's
Go into
impossible.
the dark room and remove the dark. You turn on the light. Duh.
There you go. Drop the mic.
Red nose.
Really?
Or Jess, as we've said it the other day, there's no strengths and weaknesses. Just play to your traits.
Yeah.
Right? Your traits will manifest as strengths or weaknesses.
Choose.
You choose how those traits come out.
Yeah.
And if you're not making that choice, somebody else is making that choice for you. Your brain is being programmed either by you or by somebody else.
And there are ways. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, Karen. No, I had nothing to say.
I doubt that. I'm having so much fun. I don't know about you guys watching, but we're having a ton of fun. Anil, and I was going to say, and there are ways you can make it easy. There are ways you can make it easy to turn on that light. For example, I don't know if that's the reason why, but that's what it brings to me, is your outfit. Your outfit, your hearts everywhere. You've got your hearts on your polo, your hearts on your hat, and you even have a tattoo.
Look at that.
And it's a constant reminder. I don't know if that's the reason why you did it, but that for me reminds me. So I want to say thank you for bringing the light anywhere we look at you with all these beautiful hearts. But why? Why the hearts? Tell us.
Well, I have a very bad dress sense. So I would leave the house. Just as I was leaving, my wife said, "Hey, are you going out like that?" I guess I'm not. So I would go back and change. I thought, I'm almost a grown man. So I thought, what can I do? You know what? I'll just wear black. That's easy. Well, that's pretty boring. What could I do to spice it up? Well, I could wear a heart on my sleeve, like, oh, that's cool. But no one's going to see that. What about here? And I asked the family. They said, no, don't be so silly. And because they said that, I went ahead and did some shirts. And then I took a photo with my shirt. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. So ever since, I think it's about 6 years now, I've got more than one shirt. So just in case. And it doesn't really matter because we don't have smelly television anymore. So you can't smell me. So ever since, I've just worn the same. And it's so much easier. I know exactly what I'm going to wear tomorrow, the day after, the day after, the day after. And it just makes life so much easier.
That's a good reason to make it easier. Easier.
So, Andrew, we're just going to go off script because I'm bored.
Okay. How can you say you're bored after 15 minutes? Are you serious?
I'm going.
Let me finish the sentence. Otherwise, not because Anil isn't fascinating, but because I'm not talking enough. Right?
Oh, good thing I'm talking. Let me remind you, we have 2 questions left and we have 10 minutes.
Okay. I can talk for hours, I don't mind.
Anil, I want to broach on this subject very gently and very specifically, but America's obviously going through a lot of heartache right now, and there is a lot of anger, and I've certainly got my thoughts about it, but I think your perspective would be very interesting.
Yeah, it's really, really simple. Just be love. Just be love. Just be pure love. Give love, be the love, fuel love, serve love, be loving, be kind, be generous. And that's it. Don't be reactive. We have to show up the greatest version of us. When we show up, our vibrational energies change. And then as a collective, we can create a movement. But a lot of people are reacting. You can't be reacting. You just have to be. You have to be the change. It's all about you being the change. Show up differently. Show up with more kindness. Start with the family. That's where it starts. It starts with family. It starts with here first. Work on this first, then family. Then, spread it around person by person by person. People will always remember how you made them feel. There are 2 types of people. Ones that make you happy when you enter the room. Ones that make you happy when you leave the room. Which one are you? It's really very simple. It's very basic. Change yourself. If you want to change yourself, everything around you changes. And the collective power of that is huge.
That's beautiful. You reminded me recently, somebody asked me to work with them, and I haven't actually told them this yet. Someone asked me to work with them, and I said, I'm honored, I'd love to, but why me? Right? Well, there's loads of people that could do what you asked, why me? They said, because the way you made me feel in that restaurant. I went, awesome. And then I went to my wife and went, what the hell is she talking about? What restaurant? What? And it took me days and days and days to remember, like, racking my brain. And I was like, all right. And we were at a plat party, a Tony Robbins thing. Actually, it was the Unblinded accelerator. And a lady walked in, and the maitre d' I thought was quite rude, because she was saying, I'm with this party, this party of 10. And because it was an unblinded thing, there was like 4 of parties that had all booked the same restaurant in the same vicinity. And he said, I think they're over there. And I stood up instinctively, because it was, honestly, because it was a woman, and it's how my mother brought me up, and said to maitre d', and said, I'm sure you're really busy, but when you reflect on this moment, I think you'll find you didn't handle it as optimally as you could, because your customer has just asked you where this party is, and instead of helping her, you've kind of given her a cold shoulder. And she looks a little bit nervous because she's walked into a restaurant with 200 people. She doesn't know where she's supposed to be. Perhaps you'd like to rethink this. And he started getting angry, and I went, I know you can get angry if you want, and I can get angry as well, and I'm a big dude, and I don't think that will get us very far. Instead, you could just take 1 second to reflect on the message I've given you, and I think you'll find I've done you a favor. And he did fortunately stop, and he went, thank you very much. And he turned around to me and helped her out. And to me, this wasn't a moment. It was just my instinctive reaction of someone's being unkind to somebody. I can use one of my assets, which is my size, to change the situation and quickly make people think differently. And I can protect somebody that I feel needs protection right now. And the amount of times I've done something, and I'm not nowhere near perfect, and I'm more imperfect than I'm perfect by a long way, but the amount of times I've done something and months later, years later, decades later, someone's gone, that one thing that you did. And you're like, and I just wanted to say that because the ripples that can cause, those small aspects of kindness. And then I set up my own question, and then Jess, I'm going to hand back to you to ask the questions, because a lot of people have been asking me, and therefore Hack Mankind as kind of one of the collective of our response to what's going on at the moment. And I have a slightly different viewpoint on this, because I want people to reflect. So first of all, I obviously think it was a travesty. Second of all, I think that the systemic response of government and police in this have been way off kilter of what it should be, and that's a huge understatement. I totally can understand people that protest and people that riot. I cannot get my head around how looting is an appropriate response. I think stealing a TV is not a good way to say I'm disgusted by someone getting murdered. I don't really think that. I want to be very careful with my use of the word murdered, even though I'm going to say it again, because I lived a lot of my life in the Middle East, and I still believe in due process, and I still believe in innocent until proven guilty, no matter what the evidence we've been presented is. However, my bigger answer to this is that consumerism and capitalism, now I'm going to say this as it is in my heart, and I'm going to get pain from people for saying it. If you're being honest, you didn't care about how people of minority were being treated, because you were too busy, and I, not you, Anil, I'm speaking to everybody, myself included in this sentence, were more concerned about our Netflix, the quality of our 4K connection, my Wi-Fi's dropped, my second car, my house, because consumerism and capitalism were planting 3,500 to 10,000 messages in your head every single day, telling you, buy this, your life will be good, buy this, your life will be good. And you got distracted from what really mattered. And what COVID has done is it's stripped back these layers. It's removed our ability to be consumers to some degree. It's removed our ability to think that our Starbucks venti latte is the most important thing in the world. And what we've been left with is an exposure to our real life, both in ourselves and our family and our community. And some of the things that we're seeing, we don't like. And what I would ask people to do is, if you want to hate me for what I just said, that's fine. If you want to be angry, that's fine. But look at the underlying message, because my underlying message is, as we come out of this, and as we go back to our Starbucks venti lattes, and as we go back to our Netflix, and we all start wowing over the next iPhone, which I will also be part of.
Dad, can I tell you something?
also remember that these inequalities are still happening, that these family things are still happening, that this one is still interrupting me. And don't go away from those priorities, because that's what's really real. What's really real is you, your family, your friends, your community, and the rest of it is window dressing. So I sadly said to Jess when I left the States in early March, and said, why are you leaving? And I said, because civil unrest is an absolute guarantee if everyone goes into lockdown and quarantine. I'm not denying the importance of what the civil unrest has been about, but what's actually happened, and I'm going to break the family-friendly rule, is everybody's pissed off. And everybody's pissed off with their own life. And this has happened. And finally, thank the divine, we actually have the capacity to care to the degree we should have always cared. There is nothing different in this incident from the last 100 that were like it. Nothing different. An abuse of power killed someone of a racial minority. Sadly, that's been the way it's been for hundreds of years. Just this time, we weren't distracted by the iPhone, by the Netflix, by the Wi-Fi, by the second car, by the holiday in Mallorca. So we actually got to see it for what it really was. So let's make sure that anger, hopefully demonstrated in peaceful ways, actually stays. I want us to stay angry, because we should be angry. That's my piece. There we go. Jess, say something that's more family friendly.
Okay, what were the questions, Jess?
So the first question is, you know, it kind of relates to what Peter was saying is, you know, now we've had the ability to be home. And one of the beautiful things that we've seen, like I was living in New York City, and even Peter in England, where at around 7 p.m. at night, everybody goes out to the windows and starts like applauding and banging pots and pans together to say thank you to our health workers. And one of the first questions would be, you know, what has changed for you? What has been an opportunity that you've taken on during this time of quarantine, this time of change?
You know, I thought I was playing a bigger game before quarantine. I call it staycation. So, and I realized, Anil, you could play an even bigger game. I thought, wow, you know, I really could. But, you know, do you want to? I said, yeah, you know, you're not aligned to your mission. And I thought, yeah, you know, let's step it up. Let me just give my stuff away. So I started giving my stuff away. Free calls, free Zoom calls, free masterminds. And it's been incredible, because that's allowed me to really realize the impact I can have and have made, and create other programs that will serve mankind in millions of cases. So it's really the circumstance, and it's the awareness of thinking, am I aligned with my mission, passion, and purpose? No. Am I comfortable? Yes. But what are you committed to? And are you willing to recommit? Yes. And it's been an incredible journey. I normally take 70, 80 flights a year. I'm flying all over the place. First 2 weeks was horrible because I wanted to get on a plane. Now I'm just chilled. My wife is here. My daughter was here. We spent 2.5 months together. Unbelievable experience. I don't want to go anywhere. In the mornings, I play tennis, I go for a swim, I do my work. So I've learned that I can make an even bigger impact. I wasn't congruous, aligned with my mission. I was comfortable. Flying here, flying there, everything's great, meeting the Dalai Lama, blah, blah, blah. I was comfortable. But now I don't care if I don't meet him. I want to make a bigger impact. So this is what I offer to everybody out there. What is your greatness? What is the impact you could make? Are you playing small? Could you show up bigger? And are you committed?
Beautiful. That's helpful on so many levels, even on a personal level. So thank you. And then my second and last question before we head out, and I am conscious of the time, so thank you so much for giving us a little
anytime. Yeah.
Is what do you hope to see coming out of humanity? If you'd have to name one thing. Right, I was talking about how everybody's coming together to thank the frontline responders and all that. Like, what happens when we're coming out? We're just going to forget about it and go back to our venti lattes, like Peter was saying. what is the one thing, if you could say one thing, that you'd like to see humanity come out of this?
Well, really, it's love. I just want to see more love. Once you see more love, your capacity to love increases, and then we don't have so many reactions. And then it affects everything. It affects homelessness. It affects kids' schooling. It affects their grades. It affects suicide levels. It affects every single thing. It affects our health. So I'm hopeful that our capacity to love and be loved will increase. And from that, a movement of purity and integrity will arise.
Fantastic. Yes. Love can conquer all.
Yes.
And so, Anil, how can people stay in touch with you? Do you have a program? I know you have your book as well. What's the best way to direct people to what you're doing in your work?
Well, I have a test that people can find out how happy they are. If you go to myhappytest.com, you will find out what your happiness score is, and you'll get a detailed breakdown on areas of your life you need to work on. There's videos on every question, and it'll teach you how to raise your score so that you can become a different person. You can show up differently and be this love machine that you truly are. myhappytest.com.
myhappytest.com, and you can discover how to be this true love machine that you truly are. Amazing. myhappytest.com, guys. Make sure to head on over there and follow Anil's work. Thank you so much for being
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun, insight, hacks, and cannot wait for another one of these, maybe, or just to stay connected.
Anytime.
Really
I'm totally available. Totally available. You ask me and I'll always say yes. Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Any final thoughts before we go?
Me or Peter? I don't want him to be bored.
I will give my final thoughts for everybody that watched this, and there's most of our watchers are on the replay now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Anil, you are a true light. I've been exposed to some of your work before, and everybody should listen to you and not me.
Thank you. Love you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.